Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to episode 1 of KamishaRa's Sacred Gardens, a place where prayer, plants, and ritual meet. Thank you for joining me today. And I want to start off my episode and every episode the same way by giving thanks to my ancestors. To those of whose lineage I am a descendant of, whose blood runs through my veins, whose shoulders upon which I stand, who stands to the left and the right of me, to my mother's mothers and my mother's fathers, my father's mothers and my father's fathers, to those who walk with me daily, to those who come when I call, to those assigned to assist me in helping me to fulfill my purpose in this lifetime, to those who know me better than I know myself, I thank you. Without you, I wouldn't be here. Without your guidance, I wouldn't be standing where I'm standing. And I affirm I am standing well. I'm standing tall and erect, and I am standing firm and deeply rooted. So again, I thank all of you, my ancestors. So this is definitely a podcast that's going to be going through my journey and how I became KamishaRa Mizuka, how I came to be the person that I am today. Excuse me. So we're going to start in the place before I was even thought of. We're going to start off with my maternal grandparents. So my grandmother and my grandfather were born on a small island in the Caribbean in a parish called St. Philip's in the island of Barbados. We called them Mama and Pappy. They were born in 1877 and 1901 respectively. Ooh. My grandfather was born in 1877. That was over a century ago. Wow. And my grandmother was born in 1901. They traveled here to the United States, to New York City to be exact, by boat. They came here by boat. 3rd class tickets. They didn't travel together. They came at different time periods. But they came here in 1914. That was a long time ago. That was over a century ago, now that I think about it. Because we're past 2014. Wow. They came here in 1914. Whew. Think about that. Think about what it would be like to travel by boat, not cruise. No, that's how they traveled back then. They traveled by boat. 3rd class. They were called steerage. It was the people at the bottom of the boat. If you ever seen Titanic, and the people that were at the bottom of the boat, who was right next to the engines, it wasn't a pretty picture. But that's how they got here. They came through Ellis Island, both of them, not at the same time, like I said before, but they both came through Ellis Island. And my grandfather, I can't remember what age it was when he came here. But my grandmother, she came at the young age of 19. My grandfather was a missionary. And I do not believe my grandmother was a missionary, but she was very, very involved in the church when she did come. That's where they met. They met at the church. They were some of the founding members of Miller Memorial Church of the Nazarene. Yes, that's where they met, in church. So they were very, very instrumental in helping to build that church. And that church is still here too. It's on the corner of Bedford and I forget the other street. But it's not called the Miller Memorial anymore. And they're not using the Church of the Nazarene anymore. I can't remember the name of the church that they're using. but I believe it's something with community, something another. But the church is still there. The building is still there. They also had dedicated a room in the back of that church one time to my grandfather. I wonder if that room is still there and his picture is still on the wall. I don't know. But in any case, I digress. We're going to go back to them coming here on Ellis Island. And my grandmother came at the age of 19. It makes me wonder what it was like to get up and leave everyone you knew because she came by herself. I don't know what circumstances drove her to leave and come to the United States, but she did, and she came by herself. There was definitely someone who had to meet her at Ellis Island to, receive her. So there was someone whom either she knew or the family knew that received her, but she left her mother, she left her father, she left her brothers and sisters, all of her friends, everything that she knew. I'm just like, wow, did she get homesick? Did she miss her family and her friends? I could imagine. She must have. But she adjusted. She adjusted to life here in the United States. In 1914, this was less than 100 years after slavery. So, she got here, but, they welcomed her in. But, this place wasn't necessarily welcoming to her, But she got here. They lived their lives. They met up at the church. They eventually, he went on one knee and asked her to marry her, and she said yes. And they got married and had 6 children. Well, actually, they had 8 children. Two of whom which died very young. And 6, of course, grew up to be adults, my uncles and aunts. And my mother was the youngest of the 6. She was the youngest girl child of the 6, but not the youngest of all. Did I say that right? No. She was the youngest of the girls, but the girls were older than the boys. So she was a middle child. And my mother was a bit of a rebel because my parents were devout Christians. And at that time, I think it would be safe to say that my mother was not. She grew up Christian, but, as an adult, she was a bit of a rebel. She kind of rebelled a little bit. And she was very feisty. And I'm not going to go too much into her story because that's not my story to tell. That's my mama's story to tell. And if I don't tell it right, I'm in the land of living now, but she might take me out of the land of living. But yeah. So she was the youngest of the girls, and a bit of a rebel and a bit feisty. But as she grew up, she met my father, and they married. I don't know how long they remained married, but they were married when I was born, and we lived in Brooklyn, New York, all of my lives. So I'm a Brooklynite. I'm a native New Yorker, as the song says. I'm a native New Yorker. And I was born in Brooklyn and raised in Brooklyn. And although she was raised Christian, she didn't raise us Christian. She allowed us to expand our horizons and to pretty much make our own decisions as to where we would go spiritually, how we would live our lives. She gave fundamentals, but she didn't tell us, yes, she didn't make us go to church on Sundays. I remember some of my youngest years, there were people that lived downstairs and they went to the church of the Baha'i, and they would have these huge feasts. Oh, I remember these huge feasts, and it would be a lot of people there, and they went to the church of Baha'i, so we would go to church with them. And I liked it. It was a very interesting church, but I wasn't a big church goer. We went to Church of Baha'i. We went to Baptist church. Very famous church downtown Brooklyn that the name is escaping me at the moment, but we attended that church for a while. But But church didn't really, it didn't really sit in me too well. I didn't take to church. What I did like was the music. Oh, I love the music. I could hear someone sing a gospel song, even till this very day. You hear someone who sings like from their gut, from their heart. Not just singing well, but singing what they're singing about with conviction. That could bring me to tears even to this very day. Hearing a gospel song sung well. And I mean, when I say sung well, I'm not just talking about the voice sounding well. I'm talking about sung from a place that, comes from within, deep within. And the words that they're singing about, they know these are words that are real. That kind of song, that gospel music, I still love singing. I still love singing gospel music. I sung in a choir for many years in college, all of my years through college. And I didn't attend church, but I did like singing gospel music. But as I became an adult, I made my own decisions. I didn't go to church. I didn't attend the Baha'i church or any Baptist churches. I ended up going another route. And that's the route that I'm going to start off talking about. So as an adult, I was very, I would say, influenced by my older sister, who we were like the different children because we were involved very much in, African culture and tradition. I liked history and I liked learning about the traditions of our greatest ancestors before we even got to Barbados. And my sister was studying under the late Heru Ankara Samaj Sipata. I think I said his name right. He's a very dramatic man from what I remember. But she studied at his shrine called the Shrine of Ptah. And she learned about Kemetic culture. And she ended up taking on the name Cherutut. And that influenced me. I really followed behind my sister a lot. And the things that she did, I saw them as important, so I did them too. She had home births, so I was like, yeah, I'll be having home births. She took on African traditions. I was like, yeah, that's what we're doing, taking on African traditions. So when I was first introduced to African spiritual traditions, it was not through anything Kemetic. That would come later on in my life, how I got my name. But my first introduction was actually at Akom. It was an Akom that was being held at Restoration. No, it wasn't Restoration Center. It was, wow, the name is escaping me. But it was a senior center. It was a senior center in Crown Heights. Oh, I think it was Crown Heights Senior Citizen Center. That might not be the right name, but it was a senior center. They would have Akom there, and my father's children. Not my father's children. I said that backwards. My children's father. At the time, we were dating still. He brought me there, and I walk downstairs. I'm hearing all these drums. We sit down, and I'm looking and I'm listening, and I was hooked. It was like a hug. That's what I remember. It was like sitting down and like this ancestral memory just got clued in. A little light got sparked on the innermost part of me. It's like there was a spark there, but when I heard those drums, that light got a little bit bigger. I was like, wait a minute. what's happening here? I like this. Listen to the drums and listen to the singing, and I've always loved any kind of singing about any type of spiritual singing because I like gospel. So hearing the words, they were in another language, was not in English, didn't know what they were talking about, but I could feel it. And it was like a big hug welcoming me home. Almost like they said, yes, come on in. They opened their arms and, it welcomed me home. Akom welcomed me home. So from that day forth, I've been going to Akom. I still attend Akom till this day, but we're going to start there. So they would have Akoms at this senior center. I really wish I could remember the name. I don't know why the name is escaping me, but I think it's Crown Heights Senior Center. When I remember the name, I'm going to mention it. They would have Akoms there every Sunday, and I began to go. Every Sunday, sit down, listen to the music, watch the people do these, traditional dances and sing these songs that, I could feel it, but I didn't know what they were saying. Didn't know what these songs were about. All I would end up learning is that they were songs about what they called the bosun. So each song was dedicated to a different bosun. And the bosun is what they call the gods. And there were people who were initiated who the bosun would come down and overtake. So they called it possession. So Akom is about possession. And the gods would possess the priestess and the priest. I should say priest. I don't know if they use the term priestess. But they would possess the priest and they would come down and bless the community and give messages and give blessings and give advice. So that became my thing every Sunday. And it was only once a month. No, it wasn't every Sunday. It was once a month on a Sunday that they would have these Akom, and I began to go every month. And I began to be active with the community that would host the Akom there. And that was like my thing. So I would come in, I would help prepare. After a while, I would help prepare, the space to get ready for the Akom. So, we would mop the floor and we would, set up the chairs, and they would they would create a space, a sacred space with powder. So we would help do that. And then after a while, I would start cooking foods and bringing them to the Akom. And I just became active. It was a beautiful thing, and I really, really enjoyed it. And that was my introduction, my very first introduction to African spirituality. And the person that brought me there was the father of my children. So I was very appreciative of that. I don't know how he got to learn about the Akom, but that's how I got to learn about the Akom. And so we would go, and there would be a lot of people come, and they would drum, they would sing, they would dance, and people would possess. And, messages would come down, and they would give the people blessings, sometimes in the form of powder. They would put powder on the babies, and they would put powder on the adults sometimes. And sometimes they would come around with a calabash of drink. There was one bosun that would come around, and they would he would have a calabash with drink, and you would take a drink. It was all blessings from the bosun. And I didn't know everything that was going on, but I loved it. And I continued to go every Sunday, and I continued to get more and more involved with Akom and learning about it. And there was one priest in particular. I'm not going to name any names. because I didn't get permission from them to name names. But she was an Asuo priest, a priestess of surgery. And I started to work closely with her. And, you know, that was my introduction. That was my introduction. So I became more involved, and I would go every month on a Sunday, and, you know, cook and help prepare the space and help with the singing, help with the dancing. You know, they teach you how to dance, and that was another arena. That was like learning how to do some of the dances. They're very interesting because they're very intricate, but you know, you do your best. And you learn the songs, and I would learn the songs, and I didn't know what I was talking about. Didn't know what I was singing about, but you start to learn, like, okay, this song is for this divinity, or this bosun, and this song is for that bosun. But it was just mostly me just looking and participating and learning through participation. It wasn't sit down and take class. It was learn through participation. And that was okay for a while. That was definitely okay for a while. And I did that for many, many years. And I was very, very satisfied and satiated with that. And I remember one time there was one of the bosun came down, and it went by the name of Nanaisi. So when the bosums come down, usually there's a person called an ochaimi that will go around with the bosun. And if the bosun gave any messages, it would be given through the ochaimi. That ochaimi would speak for that bosun. And Nanaisi dressed really, really elaborately with all of these scarves, and she would have scarves in her hands, and she would dance very elegantly with these scarves, and she would put powder on you. So one time, you know, I'm there, and Nanaisi comes to me, and the bosun says something, and I thought I understood what they were saying, but I don't think I fully understood. And I was like, oh yes. She said, okay. So she put the powder on my arm. You know, I'm looking, and I'm like, I wonder what that was about. And she put the powder on my arm, and you know, she did something like a blessing. So I looked at the ochaimi, and I was like, well, I don't understand why they putting the powder on my arm. She says, you said that, you know, you're with child. I was like, no, I'm not with child. And then she looked at me, she kind of raised her eyebrow. She said, are you sure? And I was like, well, no. I mean, yeah, I'm sure. I'm not with child. I think I misunderstood what you were saying. I thought you were saying something else. And she looked at me, she's like, you might want to get that checked. Lo and behold, I didn't understand, but you know, Nanaisi knew. I was with child. So 9 months later, here comes my baby. My first daughter. Well, I don't know if it was exactly 9 months later, but definitely my first daughter was on her way. So I found out that I was pregnant in Akom before I found out that I was pregnant. Because Nanaisi came up to me and she put powder on my arm. She said something first. And I can't even remember what was said and what I thought was said. But I was like, yes. She put that powder on my arm. I was like, what is the powder about? What is going on here? That was blessings for the baby. I was like, no, I'm not pregnant. I don't have no baby. The ochaimi looked at me and was like, you sure about that? I don't know. You might be pregnant. You might want to get checked. And lo and behold, I definitely was. So, you know, the power of the bosun is definitely real. And I found that out at Akom. Not a person that possessed. A lot of people would get possessed. I think it's your openness. I'm not really sure, but I've never been possessed. I've gotten really, I think maybe once or twice, just like really moved by just, the dance and the song, but not to the point of possession. So I don't think that's a thing that happens to everyone. I would say it's a thing that happens to many, but not necessarily everyone. But yeah, so I've been going to Akom ever since. At different stages in my life, I would pull back, and then I would go, and then I would move from one house or one group and working with another group, but I didn't stay put. I was not like my grandparents. They came here. He was a missionary. She was very involved in the church. She was an usher in the church, and they stayed put. They were the founders of that church, and they stayed with that church. That was their church family. That was like their home, and they helped to build it. And they did, whatever they did in the mornings. But he would help, on Sundays to put the Bibles out and whatever they did, clean the pews. I don't know what all that was done, but the same thing that I did at Akom are the things that he did, for that church. But they stayed put. They stayed put. They didn't go from church to church. And I think some of that energy of my grandparents I picked up on. Some of that, not all of it, but some of it, that wanting to be involved with a family that resonated with you, with a spiritual family that resonated with you. And that's what Akom became for me, my spiritual family that deeply resonated with me, that welcomed me home, that light a spark in the innermost portion of my soul, my spirit. And I never turned away from tradition, African traditional spirituality, even though I didn't necessarily stay put and grounded in Akom. I continued to go even till this very day. But there was a part of me that was, I guess, a little like my mom, that feistiness. I wouldn't say the rebellious part. I was not a rebel at all. My mother said, do something. I did it. I don't know I don't think she realized how obedient we were. My mom, because, sometimes when who you are is who you expect others to be. But she was the rebel. And no, her children, well, at least me and my sister, we were very obedient. If she said A, we did it. She said, don't do that, we ain't do it. All she had to do was say it, and we followed. But I don't think she realized how obedient as children we were. So I was a lot like my grandparents in wanting to involve myself in the spiritual family deeply. And I was a little like my mom in that feistiness that, if every aspect of me wasn't fully satisfied, I was going to go and find that other thing, that other aspect. And that's where I found myself, still looking, even though that fire was turned on, that spark was like, it was there, but it like was a little bit brighter. There was still an aspect that I felt that was missing. I was learning through practice, but I needed to learn something a little bit more. And that's where I found myself looking, still searching. So I'm gonna end this portion here, because I found myself still looking, still searching. But I would eventually find, that thing that I was looking for, and would take me closer to becoming KamishaRa. Yeah. So I'm going to end this podcast here, end episode 1, and I thank you for joining me. I thank you for listening. I thank you and your ancestors for bringing you to this podcast, because if you're here listening, then it was something that you needed to learn. So I will see you on the next show. Take good care of yourself. Bye-bye.